Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your boy Quattro,
I'm Diesel.
and let's dive into today's topics. In this episode, we're pulling back the curtain on the rules that shape power, prosperity, and personal connection. From the global tug of war over tariffs to the quiet cultural shifts from intentional courtship to casual dating, and finally to the wealth building frameworks many overlook, but some communities have mastered. We're examining the systems that move the needle on both national and personal levels. So let's dive in. Topic number one, the state of the tariffs. Tariffs are often misunderstood as just taxes on imported goods, but their purpose runs deeper. They're a strategic tool governments use to protect domestic industries, influence trade balances, and assert political leverage. In this segment, we'll break down how tariffs impact everyday consumers while they're used as both weapons and shields in intentional trade, and how they can ripple into inflation, job markets, and even diplomacy. Let's dive in. So, everyone's buzzword of the day, of the week, or whatever is tariffs. Everyone is talking about tariffs, pros and cons. They for tariffs. They reacting to sound bites that they heard and all this. So, it's our job to kind of set the record straight, right? Bring a
hmm
little clarity to the situation.
These tariffs have been a very interesting topic of discussion to me because I've noticed that most people really don't be understanding what they're talking about. They're just operating off of what they have heard some talking head on TV say, and then they're just parroting these things. And then the moment that they're come up against someone who actually has done their own independent research and not just operating off of what the interpretation of the talking heads is, now there's tension. So definitely needed to come and have a discussion about this so that we can at least establish the quote unquote level playing field so we can
And
understand what we're talking
And to
about.
be honest, and let me preface this, I'm not an expert
Yep,
on
me neither.
taxes or tariffs. So my opinion or my input may not be 100% accurate, but I'm just going off the information that I research and formulating an educated guess or, giving some
So
input to the situation.
that first piece was the fact sheet.
Okay.
So like always, we're gonna start off with the official document straight from the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And that fact sheet states President Donald Trump declares national emergency to increase our competitive edge, protect our sovereignty, and strengthen our national and economic security. Now, this came out on April the 2nd, which I think is important because that's when I remember kind of first hearing about it on the street, digital street level and regular street level when people start talking about this. So
Mm-hmm.
got to go back to where we began, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
And so just we're kind of I'm gonna read the highlights real quick of
Yeah.
what this fact sheet was basically covering. So for example, it said pursuing reciprocity. Reciprocity is a key word here, ladies and gentlemen. Reciprocity.
I think we might need to give them that definition.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity, reciprocal, reciprocated.
So reciprocity means the practice of exchanging things with others for mutual benefit, especially privileges granted by one's country or organization to another.
Booyah.
So, with that being said, pursuing reciprocity to rebuild to rebuild the economy and restore national and economic security. So that was what the quote unquote purpose. That's what that's what they were trying to do here. They wanted to make sure that we was getting ours.
I mean, and personally, I'm with it. You know what I'm saying? If the country has been losing on tariffs up until now, where we're paying more in tariffs to other countries than countries are paying tariffs to us. I mean, it's a no brainer to let's reevaluate the situation and let's have a fair playing field.
Hmm.
And that's why we see a lot of the countries are coming to the table like, okay, now they're bargaining. Now they are bargaining.
Right.
It's one of them days. I'll tell you, there's a lot going on over here. Um, you know, zero tariffs. So they say, America, you give us zero tariffs, and we give you zero tariffs.
Mm.
So now, that's the bargaining chip that they're using now,
Hmm.
which is like, okay, cool. You don't charge us, we won't charge you. But in the same reply, even with countries like China, it's like, okay, y'all charging us a lot of money,
Yeah.
and we're selling a lot of products of that's made in China,
Yeah.
and so therefore there has to be some reciprocity
Hmm.
there. That makes it fair for both sides, or whatever the case may be. Makes it lucrative and advantageous for both sides, and not lopsided.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand like why the pushback so much about the tariffs. Anytime you change any financial implementation or any type of structure, there is a brief period of adjusting. You know what I'm saying? Where things have to get settled. It has everything. The scales need to balance back up.
Hmm.
Whatever. So for anyone to have the perspective, or the mindset that this is supposed to be immediate and there's no effect to change. Anytime you change anything, there's a cause and effect to everything.
Right.
And now I say let's give it time. It sounds good, and we already reaped over
Trillions, I want to say.
trillions, and yeah, like over 1 trillion in money from tariffs already. And he's not even halfway through, the negotiations with all the countries that want to, make some type of deal. So in my honest opinion, I think give it a chance. Let's see. I mean, we seen what we've been doing up until this part.
Right.
Up until this point, it led us into a what is it, $37 trillion deficit?
I don't remember the specific number, but I do
But it's
remember it was
trillions.
trillions.
It's trillions of dollars in deficit, and people think trillions is trillions, and there's a huge difference. Number one, there's a huge difference between 1 million and 1 billion.
Hmm.
And so for you to take it to the trillion, I challenge you all to see the difference in the comparison from 1 million, because a lot of people, we could gather 1 million. And even that 1 billion concept kind of goes over our head.
It
You know what
does.
I'm saying? But to be at 1 trillion, come on now. And we're at like 37 trillion in deficit. So anything that's going to help our deficit, or, ease kind of get us to bring that down, like,
Hmm.
come on, we got to try something, because what's been happening hasn't been working.
Yeah.
And then we can't sustain the way that our financial institution is set up for this country. We can't sustain like this,
Hmm.
and that's the emergency that the administration is taking, because it's unsustainable. Like, we will collapse just off paying the interest and all on the debt that we have.
A lot of it too.
Yeah, like, it's not sustainable. So I don't understand why we can't come together on that. We want what's best for America.
So he says the next point was taking back our economic sovereignty. President Trump refuses to let the United States be taken advantage of and believes that tariffs are necessary to ensure fair trade, protect American workers, and reduce the trade deficit. This is an emergency. So the trade deficit being representing is, let's just say me and Will, we are doing business, and I agree to send him business. He agrees to send me business. But 2 years down the line, he sent me 100 pieces of business, and I've only sent him 10 pieces of business. That creates a 90 pieces of business trade deficit for him, not for me, but for him.
Hmm.
So that's basically what they want. They want to try to clear up, which is why they're doing the tariffs. Also have this kind of like outside the box thought that we got to remember too that this dude is a not a politician. He is a businessman, and part of being a businessman, as we've seen from plenty of time, he's about making a deal. And part of making those deals though is again kind of doing things like putting out these tariffs just to get people to the table.
Yeah, you
That
got.
seems like to me what really was the point of these tariffs, not necessarily because he's trying to create, tank the economy. But because it was just that was his way of getting them to the table.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like,
I mean,
and
he's
people,
the author of that book, isn't he?
the art of the deal,
The Art of
right?
the Deal.
So I think that people aren't taking that into consideration when they're, looking at these types of things. That he's not operating like a politician, even though he is, quote unquote, formally. But he's operating like a businessman, and he's using his business owner, businessman tactics,
Right.
not necessarily political tactics. And in case, from my opinion, I should say, this seems like to be, ultimately why he even did these tariffs. You know what I mean?
And everyone is in uproar about it, saying, "Oh, we get a lot of stuff from China, so the stuff from China is going to cost more." So that's the incentive for you to look for more American made items. Everything that we get from China is actually made in America, and we just have to make a choice. And that's the carrot that he throwing out there. If you make and build in America, you don't have no tariff. I mean, so he's trying to give you a alternative that benefits us, and at the same time, if you can't, move your production to America, let's have a tariff that is fair
Yes.
and not lopsided.
And so, to your point, one of the points here says, "Made in America" is not just a tagline; it's an economic and national security priority of this administration. The president's reciprocal trade agenda means better paying American jobs, making beautiful American-made cars, appliances, and other goods.
Right.
So the next point was reprioritizing U.S. manufacturing, which pretty much you kind of touched on already.
Mm-hmm.
President Trump recognizes that increasing domestic manufacturing is crucial to U.S. national security.
Yes.
And I'm starting to see that. We're starting to see commitments from these foreign countries as well as American-based countries prioritizing building, manufacturing facilities here in America. Now, again, these are just pledges.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Time will only tell if they actually pull the trigger on these things. But again, he seems to me like he's doing this just to get people to the table to make some deals like this. Like, all right, we go bring X money. We go build a five. I think Apple's supposed to be building like a $500 billion facility
Yeah.
someplace.
Honda.
Hyundai or Honda.
Hyundai. Yeah.
Hyundai, I want to say in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these countries are saying they're going to be
Walmart.
investing. Yeah, all these countries are now like, we're going to be bringing manufacturing as well as.
Because there was a time where I kind of remember this too. I remember when all the business was going overseas. Everything was going away. Because remember, there used to be a time you would call customer service and you would get an actual American on the
Hmm.
phone to help you.
Yeah.
And there was like this era came where when you call customer service, there's always someone over in Thailand, somebody with a thick accent that you could barely understand, because they have pushed those jobs over there for them because they pay them less money.
Hmm.
So and I remember that shifting because it was like you couldn't get a can I get a manager? Can you get somebody that speak English, please,
Right.
on the phone? Like even when you call on Bank of America's customer service and things like that, like these, well, not Bank of America, but some other these big companies, when you call a customer service, you're 9 times out of 10 talking to someone that's outside the country,
Hmm.
and that's been I don't think we don't have to do that. I don't think so.
I agree.
I don't think so. Especially if we're um, focusing on strengthening American and the people here in the working class and the middle class. Is like someone said, why they transporting all these deporting all these illegal immigrants and they making all these factories. Who's going to work in these factories? They need to keep the illegal immigrants here and let them work in the
They
factories.
bigotry was speaking loud right there.
And these were like, our people, that was, call themselves making a point, going against Trump, you know, and it was just like, so you want to move the slave and sweatshops here to America now, and that's what we're gonna do. So now you're gonna, demoralize these human beings and make them work for pennies, Like that ain't right. That ain't what we trying to do. We trying to give people a fair wage for a fair job rendered.
Hmm.
That's what we're trying to do, where everybody can live comfortably, whether you are in middle class or upper class or whatever the case may be. You do a fair job, you get a fair wage.
Hmm.
Period. You know what I'm saying? It ain't because you a legal immigrant, you're gonna go down there and work at the Ford factory and make, $2 an hour. Like, no. Come on now. We ain't trying to do that to people either. Like, it's
Right.
ridiculous.
Now, the reason why we wanted to just kind of set this playing field for you guys, because we wanted to specifically now go into one of the most recent tariffs that have been levied, which has been against Hollywood.
Dun dun dun. A
So
lot going on
on
in Hollywood.
May 4th, President Donald Trump announces a 100% tariff on all movies produced outside the United States entering the American market. Now,
Mm.
this one kind of made my spidey senses go up because I know you, being someone in the film industry, having produced feature films that you can go buy now on Amazon. I felt that this would be an interesting pocket of the tariff to talk about because Americans, we love our films. We love our
Hmm.
movies. We love our entertainment. And I don't think Americans really understand, though, how much of film is not made in America.
Yeah, they really don't. They really don't.
Even though it's set in America,
Hmm.
the films are not being made in America.
Yeah, they're going to the cheapest corners of the earth to manufacture these films and then come back and display them in the home box office. Here in America, which is the film capital of the world. And you know, I'm right now. Whatever Trump is doing, like it's only been 120 days he's been in office, something like that.
Hmm.
Nothing. At least get a man a good solid year just to see where the needle is moving. Is it
Yeah,
moving, forward? Is it staying still,
right.
or is it declining?
It ain't gonna be no instant
It's
gratification
not.
microwave results.
It's not. And so I just despise these commentators that every day they get on here and 2 seconds after he make a decision they like tearing it apart without giving any alternatives.
That's the crazy part.
So okay, that's horrible. What you suggest we do,
Hmm.
or what did the Democratic Party do the 40 years they've been in power before here? You know what I'm saying? That they then had our vote secured.
Hmm.
So what did they do differently? Because we're at a $37 trillion deficit, so something ain't working.
Right.
Something is wrong.
And it seems to me that, to your point, they have no recommendations or no solutions, no resolves, but they just want to keep everything the same.
And it can't. It's
Right.
not sustainable.
Right. Especially for the times that are here and now. It can't be done. And so there needs to be some quote unquote updating. No different than we all got iPhones now. So every time, every day, or I mean, not every day, but every now and then we'll get the little notification that, it's time for a software update.
Hmm.
Or we get told that they made a new one, so it's time for a hardware update. It's just like the same principles apply to policy. I mean, government as well, though.
It's funny you said that because my boy Scott, he said he was talking to one of the Doge members and asked him, what was one of the surprising things or the biggest accomplishments that you encountered thus far, and he was saying like we was able to make an IT fix because they had catalogs and catalogs of information and all types of data that they couldn't process or wasn't being processed effectively, and they were able to redesign the functionality of the IT system, how they process all this data, where things can be done on a faster scale. Everything is labeled. Everything is has a category, and everything is represented and accounted for. And so the person on the left, the Democrat, was like, "Oh, so you talking about all this is about an IT? That's the biggest accomplishment, ma'am." Like you just said, like we have to update our phones, our laptops, and things like that. You have to do an IT upgrade.
Mhm.
And if our American financial entity hasn't been upgraded in the past 50 years,
Mhm.
and you got these young Doge, this young Doge team that was able to come in and restructure the IT of processing all this information
Hmm.
and data. That's good. You don't
That's a good thing.
minimize that.
Yeah.
Like, don't like, oh, that ain't nothing. This is just, oh, your biggest accomplishment is that you is an IT win. Like, yeah, do you know how important IT is?
Mhm.
Do you know how important everything you deal with in life nowadays in 2025 is surrounded or based in IT?
I saw another clip where they were showing how it took roughly like it was either 6 weeks or 6 months for someone to retire from the government because of all the paperwork that they had to go through. And it was just like mounds and paperwork, and everything had to be done by hand. So, which is why it took so long.
You know,
So, coming in and like you said, that's part of the software upgrade that the government needs.
and
Just
that just reeks of fraud and
that's
misleading
my
and lie,
point.
don't
Like
it? Like you still
six
doing I want and
hand
hand
calculations
calculations and
and
hand
on
notes and
paperwork,
right. Paper.
and this is 2025.
I got a friend. She'll kill me if I say this, but I don't care. Tina don't care. She cracks me up. She's a little older, right? So she always say, "Yeah." I'm like, "What you doing?" She's like, I got to do some paperwork." I'm like, "Tina's 2025. Ain't nobody doing no paperwork.
A lot
Ain't
of
no
people still be doing that
ain't
though.
no paperwork. If you go get online and get the app and whatever the case may
But
be."
see, that's what I'm talking about. Like going back to our previous episodes where we're talking about paradigms, the map and the GPS.
Right.
We still have a significant amount of baby boomers who are
Yes.
operating off of the map. So they're
Yes.
still technically doing paperwork.
Yes.
Like my father being one of them. It's like, oh, I gotta go do my invoice paperwork. But it's just like, bro, like everything is on your phone, bro.
Yeah. And Tina the
Oh well,
same way.
but then that's it. That's be a lot of their complaints. Like, oh well, my customers, you know what I'm saying? They like the paperwork, but it's just like
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
not upgrading we
Mm-hmm.
not updating our softwares. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? As human beings, you know, as well as how we do things. And
Right.
so this is a great time for us to be experiencing this and going through these updates because they're very much needed. And you know we are going to have to start moving towards more digital platforms because the reality is the world is becoming more digital,
Yeah.
and that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
And you're either going to be, as they say, get with the times or get left behind, and
Yeah.
it's just that simple.
Yeah. Basically, all I could say in regards to these tariffs is just we have to be patient.
You have to be patient,
We
right?
got to be patient and see what's the outcome. On paper, theoretically, it makes sense. If you're going to make a film outside the country, all the money, that goes into making a film, you're taking a lot of money outside the country.
Exactly.
There's local crew,
Millions.
yeah, the millions. There's, locations that you're using, staff and crew that you're acquiring and employing and all types of things that,
Yep.
go on permitting and, you paying money to those municipalities and those different, areas that you're filming in and things like that. You're using the resources. That mean you got to buy food from that area. You got to buy gaff tape. You got to buy stingers.
Right.
You need paper. You need bottled water. All that stuff. Comes from that region that you're shooting in. And so if you're going to take all that money out of our country to create a product that you're going to bring back to our country to highlight and sell and profit off,
Hmm.
it only makes sense that, one hand washes the other. You know what I'm saying? All right, you're going to go out there, you're going to take all that money out there and give it to them to create this product. So now you're bringing this foreign made product to America, and it's only right that we put a little tax on it. We put a little, put a little something on top.
100%.
Just a little something on top. We all the same way. You know what I mean? We take ours off the top, a little something, something for the troubles, and then you go ahead and that's how we rock out. And the same thing will happen when we create a film here, and you go over to these foreign territories
Right.
to distribute your film. There's
Right.
there's a whole bunch of tariffs and taxes associated with it. Tax breaks included. So I think the big thing is just to be patient and to just let's see where this goes. Like the man hasn't even been in office for a year. He got three more. You know what I'm saying? So give us at least at I say to be fair, give it 2 years. Halfway through his his final term.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And a lot of things that he's implementing probably really won't get going until that last year. When he's on his way out.
Right.
And I can see it now. Whoever's going to come in after him is going to be like, they got the best, economy. Like they done did all this and realizing, because y'all the first to say it. Oh, he inherited an Obama economy. That's why it was so good. So now, moving forward, because he's not running again, he's not getting a third term.
Right.
You stop that foolishness. You know what I
Right.
mean? So he's gonna go ahead and do it now. What y'all should have did was let him stay in the office that first term, so that his two terms could have been
Done.
right, and he could have got more things done. If this is the mindset that he had when he was in his first term, by the time his second term came, things would have turned around and we would be in a better state now.
Hmm.
So,
So one more point, couple more points on the tariffs on Hollywood. He says several international locations, including New Zealand and others, offering subsidies have attracted U.S. film projects like the Minecraft movie, while Prime Minister Christopher Luxon awaits more details on tariffs. Says Trump suggests imposing tariffs on films imported into the country if filmmakers choose not to produce their movies within the United States, labeling this situation as a national security concern and attributing it to a coordinated effort by foreign countries. So my I guess thought on that is he's saying that because maybe again for the money, it's becoming a national security concern because now, like I said, we have hundreds of millions of dollars leaving the country and being given pretty much to these foreign countries
hmm
with nothing coming back to America,
yeah, which is
which is
fine.
part of the trade deficit.
Yeah, that's part of the trade
That's
deficit.
part of creating the trade deficit, I should say.
And I could see if he's saying no film that's made in another country is permitted here. Like he ain't shutting it down. Like you got to give a little to get a little.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Says this tariff aims to encourage domestic production by penalizing foreign-made films though implementation details remain unclear and other countries continue to promote their film industries aggressively.
hmm
So I don't think that people again really understand how much money goes out the country when they do make these films because a lot of a good site that I would recommend you guys start looking at is called Ground News,
Yeah.
and they show the left, the right, and then the center, so you get the news from all three perspectives. And so for me, it was interesting how on the left, which is going to be mostly Democrats,
hmm
the headlines read as if oh my God, this is going to be an end to Hollywood, and then on the right, it was just kind of like not necessarily the end of Hollywood, but just let's see how the cookies gonna crumble. But the center was I was noticing a lot of the articles were of from highlighting like local film markets and the local individuals in said market were like, yeah, they like it
Yeah, because that's going to force production here. So you got Tyler Perry who has his
in
studios
Atlanta, right?
in Atlanta. You got Cat Williams who allegedly acquired a military base
In
to create
Alabama.
a production studio.
Hmm.
Uh,
We got
then you
50
got
Cent
50
in
Cent,
Louisiana.
who has one allegedly in Louisiana that they're moving to create and get popping. So that's going to bring jobs and opportunities
To these
to
areas.
these areas and to our country as a whole. We got to remember we are all Americans
Hmm.
and we live in America, and that's very important. There's no white America, there's no black. We are all Americans, and we need to work collectively together. What's good for the geese is good for the gander. Ain't that
Hmm.
what they say? So let's stop being all at each other necks and just, he's representing all of us. Y'all was talking about that ain't my president. Yes, he is.
Right.
So
Whether you
get out
like
of
it or not.
delusion, whether you like him or not. We have to respect the office of the presidency and give him a chance to do what he gonna do because he was voted in. That's who we selected. So, and nothing's guaranteed and nothing's promised. But if it work, it work. If it don't, it don't. And I think it's gonna work. I think.
Personally, Will, this is since as an adult, this is probably the first time I have noticed a president that's actually championing the average
The
American
people.
worker, the
Yeah,
people, right?
the people. Because you know
trying to
why?
trying to trying to make moves for the people.
You know why? Because he's not a politician. And that's why they're fighting so hard because politicians have a career and a tendency and a track record of being crooked and underhanded and lying. You know, lying is synonymous with what? An attorney and what else? A politician. You know, everybody says that a politician's lies. They lie. So when you have someone that's this business minded person that's looking at things for how they present it, and you just looking at it at face value, like, oh, we doing this, this, and that. Oh no, we need. Why are we overextending ourselves here and here and here and here and here when ain't nobody overextending themselves to help us? So let's let
Right.
let's balance this out, and I bet you we'll get more into our coffers here in America.
I'm pro-American personally.
I'm pro America too.
And
This
I
is
don't
our country.
care if you Republican, Democrat, Independent. It don't matter to me. I don't subscribe to any one of those personally, but
Right,
it's like I'm more so concerned about, is the policy benefiting America first?
right,
Like, is the money coming to America first?
right.
Are the resources coming to America first, or are we having policy where we just sending hundreds of millions of billions of dollars out the country in the name of foreign policy?
Hmm.
And it's just like I never understood why why we were so horny to be in everybody else's business around the
Hmm.
world, and as well as giving everybody else in the world all this money when again ain't nothing coming back to us.
Yeah,
And it's like, because ultimately that's unsustainable
yeah.
and it will lead to a collapse. And again, we as the people are going to be the ones left holding back.
Yeah, we the people. We the people. There's only one people. That's all of us. It's not we the Republicans. It's not we the Democrats. It's not we the Green Party. You know,
Right.
it's not we white people. It's not we black people. It's we the people. We are the people. And the moment that we come together as Americans, first and foremost, period, we'll have a better perception on things. And just on a side note, like the way we look at things will change. Like that whole situation with a white lady called the young black kid the N word, and so now is an outroar. But if you take what we've been presenting and take out the whole black American, white American thing, and we address it as both of them people were Americans. Now the conversation is how could she talk or downgrade another American like that?
Hmm.
See, the conversation changes, so it's a different dynamic. It's not a dynamic that perpetuates animosity and hatred and clashing and come and competing and battling. You know, we take out the divisive part and focus on the commonalities, which is we are all Americans. So now the dialogue is, why would that American talk to another American like that? And
Hmm.
everybody would agree, like, no, we all on the same, we all Americans. Like, come on, like,
Right.
ain't nobody getting into that. Nobody got time for that. It don't make sense. But I digress.
So in closing,
Yeah.
when to kind of end it on this note, when was whiteness invented? It says the white race was invented by rich Virginians in 1676 in the aftermath of the populist rebellion of impoverished, indentured, and enslaved Africans and Europeans, known as Bacon Rebellion. Now that's important because, to your point, prior to whiteness being invented, you was literally an African, or you was usually or an American in these 13 colonies, but there was no.
European, you mean
I mean, yeah. What did I say?
American?
Yeah, there were Europeans and Africans and other, there were Asians and other people,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no white or black
Right.
to divide people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, divide the indentured, the impoverished, and the enslaved, because that's really what it was all about. That's the only reason why whiteness was invented by who? Rich Virginians,
Mm.
because it was a class
Mm.
war, not a race war. But the race war is just a smokescreen that's still persistent today, that has us still divided, making us not operate as one unit. Because when we, like, already, when you travel out of America, you're an American.
Oh yeah,
There is no black. There is no
yeah.
white.
Let me
You're
let
an
me
American.
let me reiterate that. Like, I don't know what in the world, what kind of dog food we eating here in America. because when you go out to other countries, and I've been to quite a few of them, and we are referred to as Americans. There are no black Americans. Like this whole black American, African American, uh, white American. No, when you go to France, Spain, even when you go to Africa, I mean, we could see Elon Musk. He is in Africa. He's noted as an African. He's not noted as a white African or the black. They're Africans. You know what I'm saying? When you go to Spain or France or Germany, and you in Germany and you see a dark skinned complected person, they're not a black German.
Right, they just German.
They're just German. You know what I'm saying? But only in America is where we have all these entities in place to perpetuate division. I keep telling you that divide and conquer. I'm telling you, it is in full effect, and we are sipping the Kool Aid every day. Every day we stand up and talk about Republican, Democrat, black, white, short, tall, rich, poor, all these devices to keep us pinned against each other. No bueno.
No bueno. Remember, we're all America.
We all Americans. America first.
This is how tariffs work. Tariffs are simply a tax on an importer, meaning whoever buys the product pays the taxes. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say someone in the US buys corn from Canada and Mexico because it is cheaper to buy from them than it is to buy locally in the US. They sell it for $1, US sells it for $1.50. Now with the 25% tariff, that $1 turns into $1.25. And the US government collects that 25 cents. With the 25% tariff, the consumer either has the choice to buy locally or pay that higher price in tariffs. With the 25% tariff, the consumer either has a choice of buying locally at $1.50 or still buy from the other countries but pay a higher price. It's oftentimes still cheaper to buy overseas than it is to buy locally because the cost of labor in those countries are so low. So it's still likely that the buyer will still continue to buy overseas but pay that higher price. But that higher price is passed on to you as a consumer. So regardless of what happens, you as the end buyer will still pay the price.
Next up is topic number 2: how courtship became dating. What used to be an intentional path toward commitment has shifted into a more casual, convenience based culture. We'll explore how traditional courtship, rooted in family values, clear intentions, and long term planning, transformed into modern dating, which is often influenced by media, apps, and instant gratification. What did we lose in this transition, and what might we need to reclaim to build stronger relationships? Interesting. Let's dive in.
Mm.
So, when you brought this topic up to me, I have to admit, I was a little like bewildered, like, what is he getting at? You know what I mean? So I did say, I heard you out, I listened, and then I did the research. I did, then it made more sense to me as I was doing
Hmm.
my research. As you can see, all the videos I uploaded, because I'm like, oh, I get it now. I get it now. Where courtship is more so two responsible, complete, functional adults coming together to come up with a plan for a long time goal, whatever in mind, whether it be marriage, whether it be a partnership, a businessship, whatever the case may
Hmm.
be. You have two solid entities coming together, and we're going to map out a plan.
Hmm.
Compared to dating,
Right.
which dating now is you got so many options, she got so many options. We'll just randomly date, on surface level elements, as far as your height, your looks, how much money you got.
Right.
And then hopefully we'll stumble across someone that we match with and can build with. And what happens 9 times out of 10 when you're doing this dating effect, you get caught up in the looks or whatever, the money that they have or whatever the case may be, and then you try to build a long term commitment or relationship or marriage off of that.
Hmm.
And then once you get into the marriage, said marriage, Now the personalities are coming up. Their paradigms start to
The
show.
humanity.
The humanity of them start to show. Their proclivities start to show. Their dislikes, their strengths, and their weaknesses. And it is like
And
now,
y'all not even prepared.
and you want to get out. Now you like, oh, I can't stand this motherfucker.
This ain't
or
what
she,
I thought it was gonna be.
right. Or she getting on my nerves. I can't stand this bitch is dumb as fuck. Like, or whatever. Like, she don't clean. This bitch don't even clean her hair. She don't even like her feet stink. So it's like now you finding out all these other nuances where had you took the road of courtship where we both sat down at the table and was like, look, boom, 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 I like this, I roll like this, I operate like that. And then you go, oh, I do this, I do that. So if we're trying to get this, if we're trying to move and create a family, I would like my kids to be homeschooled. I think that's important. Then the other person, you give your feedback like, okay, who's going to homeschool them? Not me, because I want to go to work. And so therefore you had those conversations,
Right.
and you deal and
Right.
negotiate, so to speak,
Right.
and hopefully it's reciprocated.
Right. Right. And so to your point, the reason why this was a topic I wanted us to discuss as well was because I'm just seeing a lot of people confusing dating with courtship as well.
Yeah.
And the people also don't understand where dating came from.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They don't understand the origin of it to understand that just because you're dating someone does not mean it is going to automatically lead to marriage.
No.
But if you're courting somebody, that is going to 9 times out of 10 lead to marriage.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like we're not beginning with the end in mind, but then we're wondering why we can't have these outcomes that we're desiring, which is for most men and women. We're not talking about y'all anti-marriagers or your anti-relationship people or anti-partnership peoples. You gotta make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into before you get yourself into it.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to at least give us an opportunity to kind of just go through again the history of how courtship has morphed into dating, so that we can just have a better understanding of how we can make better decisions when it specifically comes to our intimate male-female relationships moving forward.
Because they say when you do this dating thing, you don't have the emotional depth, the real connection with that individual. So when hard times come up, or these instances come up, you don't know how to deal with them, because there's no depth, there's nothing to sustain you and keep you in it to win it. And then you try to you think it's somebody, you think is the grass is green on the other side with the 3 other people that's in your DMs, or the other people that hit you up or liked your picture on social media, compared to when you're doing courting and these adversities or hard times come up. You don't look at it as like, oh, I'm ready to fight. It's like, okay, this is a moment, this is a situation, this is a patch that we just going to have to get through. And then we'll talk through it, we'll live through it, we'll process it, and then we'll move on, because we got to stick to our plan, our goal. We got something in the making here. So we're not going to let these little small things that come up, because we already discussed this. I already got an idea that you're going to want maybe do this here, or I'm not taken back by it. You know what I'm saying? Where in dating, you're taken back by the essence of the person, because you have no substance. There's no depth of understanding them and knowing who they are really as a person,
Yeah.
and how they operate and respond to emergencies, how they respond to lack, or how they respond
It's
to
just pure chaos.
danger, or how they respond to your in-laws, and how bunch of people in the house or no people in the house, because some people can't function in silence. You know what I'm saying? So
I think it was another good point that it brought up about how courtship was a family affair.
Yeah.
There was no, I'm gonna just do this and it's it is gonna be what it's gonna be. It was just like, nah, this is a family decision. This ain't about just how you feel.
Yeah, almost make me wish we go back to arranged marriages.
And because it was bigger than just your feelings
and your looks
and your individuality. Yeah. Right. It was because the families understood back then that, again, y'all gonna have a life to live together.
Yeah.
And y'all got legacies and names and resources on the line that we have to move forward, into the future. And these things, these structures, these institutions aren't going to be able to be sustainable if the two people together aren't a good match, aren't compatible for each other.
Right.
And so, on that note, there's an article that was posted on the New York Post back in 2016. It talked about the fascinating history of courtship, of how courtship became dating. There's a good book by a lady named, I believe her name is Maury Weigel, but the book is
Interesting.
Labor of Love: The Invention of Dating, and that was pretty much what sparked the topic. Because as we just said, prior to like the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was no like public, there was no dating.
Mm-hmm.
Like dating wasn't a foreign concept for a couple of reasons. A, because the courtship was the only way for people to get married or to form romantic or intimate relationships and families. But also two, you ain't had the time. You had a job, you know what I'm saying, within your household,
You got shit to do.
and you didn't have the money to be out just going to these just to these different places. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Both the men and the women. Y'all
Mm-hmm.
both had jobs. Y'all both didn't have the time to be. Y'all didn't have. There was no such thing as free time.
Mm-hmm.
You feel me? Because back then you primarily lived within your family. There was no like a lot of social connections in that regard. Yeah, you may have known the Petersons or the Johnsons that was up the road or down the street from you, but as far as who you associated with on a day to day basis, you associated with your relatives.
Right.
Like period.
Right.
More specifically, your immediate relatives.
Right.
And then your extended relatives was kind of like your friends, where you did have when you did have quote unquote free time, like that's who you went to function with. And so what happened was when the Industrial Revolution came around, now we are in a position where people are migrating from their agricultural based communities
Mm-hmm.
now to these big metropolis locations in the big city, as we like to call them. And you now have both men and women in these big cities with now excess time, because now people have jobs. They have 9 to 5s, and now they had extra money to spend.
Mm-hmm.
They had disposable income. And then this is also too why in that during that period of time we start to see the creation of things such as theme parks, or the movies, things like that, like this opportunities for people to entertain themselves, because now you had the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But what ended up happening was you had a lot of women coming to the bigger cities, to be the secretaries, to be the phone operators, to do those types of work. But what was happening was the employers weren't paying them full full wages, because their perception was that these women were just working to subsidize their fathers or their household's income.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they was really out there living by themselves.
Mm.
So technically, they were being underpaid. If there was any moment of a gender pay gap, that was when it existed, because women were legitimately and knowingly being paid less than men in the name of, oh, they're not trying to, they don't have to take care of themselves.
So were they being underpaid for doing the same job as a man, or the category of jobs that they were in, which is less paying?
It wasn't at the category of jobs. Well, they weren't doing the jobs as men, but the jobs that they were doing, let's just say if they were supposed to be paid $1, the employers were specifically paying them 50 cents,
Oh,
because it
okay.
was like, oh, what I'm saying, she don't need the full rate, because she's only working to subsidize her dad's income.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? As opposed to just like, oh, the job pays $1, give her $1.
Okay.
You know what I'm
See, and
saying?
I think that's the piece that people don't understand, that the initial onset of this, women were taken care of. So they, like you
Because
said,
again, it was
the father.
there was no public courtship as well.
Mm-hmm.
You like the video said, the men had to woo the women from a distance.
Okay.
There was no close contact.
Mm-hmm.
So when the women were coming to these bigger cities and they were looking for a job and they were getting work, but it was like they were still viewed as quote unquote their father's daughter, who didn't need to be compensated in full rate because she was there to help him out, not take care of herself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
And so that's what so what ended up happening was, again, now we have women who were being underpaid, which means they can't afford the basic necessities in life, shelter, food, clothing. And so what ended up happening was,
Well, they didn't need those things. That was provided, the shelter,
no, it
food.
wasn't.
Wasn't that
They were
provided by
there
the
work.
father?
So the same way they left, the men were leaving their households to come to work in these big cities. The women were leaving their households, but the
Oh,
perception
they
by
was
the
oh they
men,
was leaving the comfort
they
of their
yes,
families and
yes,
their fathers
yes,
to go pursue their own
yes.
feminist right
And it
movement.
wasn't it wasn't about feminism. It was just we want to go work in the big city. No, because if you remember, everything was agricultural.
So you don't think that was part of the feminist movement
That there
that
was
they
no
wanted
that
to do
was
that?
it was nothing about feminism. It was solely about just women going to work in the big city like men were going to the big city to work.
Isn't that the feminist movement in a nutshell? Was the women
Nah.
wanting to work
I
and
mean, not from my
be
perspective. No, it was no different than I'm 18. I want to go live on my own. No different than the men. I'm 18. I want to go live on my own.
But I
I want
guess
to
what
go
I'm
to the
trying to
move to
get
the
at,
big city.
like what transpired that? Because
The, no, the same thing that
if it was working one way, and they were and they were taken care of, they had the food and they had the shelter,
mhm.
and then if they wanted to work, they would get partial pay because most of their needs were taken care of.
But that was it though. The men perceived that they were being taken care of by their
Hmm.
fathers, but they weren't because they were on their own.
Okay.
No different than when a man left his familial household or family farm to go work in the big city, he was on his own.
Right.
So he has to go get it out the mud like anybody else and build himself up to be able to support himself.
Hmm.
And the same thing with the women. They were leaving their familial households and going to go work in the big cities to be on their own. So what was happening though, you had this influx of all these women coming in, and they weren't they were being underpaid. And so what ended up happening was, again, the perception of women were still as if they were their quote unquote father's children,
Hmm.
even though they were literally there on their own. And so they would be the men in a sense felt pity for them, knowing what the situation is. So the men would just, oh, let me take you out to eat, or like, let me buy you a meal. I know you ain't got it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
Right.
let me go ahead and buy you a meal. Let me go ahead and no, you want to go check out this new spot? Let me go take you. Now, that's really how it all began. You know what I'm saying? Because or how courtship became dating. Because what the public officials of the time, they didn't like that. They didn't like that activity because they viewed it as women being adrift.
Gotcha.
Because again, the perception was that these were women still under their father's covering,
Right.
but they weren't.
Gotcha.
They were there on their own, just like the men were there on their own. So
Hmm.
because they were there and not under their father's covering, again, they didn't have the ability to have the money to take care of themselves like the
Hmm.
men did. So the men, you know what? Let me like I said, let me look out for you. But that action right there, because remember, there was no public courting in that regards, or unchaperoned courting. So if you saw, for a man and a woman to be together, the only time that happened was still prostitution. So these women were being assumed to be prostitutes
Mm.
when they weren't. They were
Hmm.
just regular women. But because of the perception of the times and the authority figures and all those types of individuals, they assumed that they were prostitutes. So like, a woman could be thrown in jail for simply being out on a quote unquote date with a man.
Oh wow.
Because it was the authority figures, the mayors, the police, they were viewing it as prostitution.
Mm.
Because that was all that they knew. That's all they cared about. Like, because it was, again, there was no public courtship in that regards.
Great.
And so, one quote here says, "Women who let men buy them food and drinks or gifts and entrance tickets look like whores, and making the date seem the same as turning trick."
Hmm.
So, over time, You know what I'm saying? It says these circumstances gave birth to dating rituals and other unfortunate traditions that still remain, or at least still cause confusion as morals change today, or morals change today. So again, the morality, the perceived morality of the times of the early, like late 1800s, early 1900s, they were still, uh, when it came to relationship, courting,
Yeah.
not dating.
Mm-hmm.
But like anything else, as time went on, again, women started to like anything else, it became a more accepted. And what ended up happening was, it says by the mid 1900s, women on dates came to be known as charity girls, as in, since they took no money for their favors, they were
Mm-hmm.
perceived to be giving it away as charity.
Mm.
But even in that, it's just kind of like, all right, what do they mean by
I'm
charity?
about to say, is that a cool name for
Right. And by charity, they meant, and by the 1920s, the prostitutes at New York Strand Hotel were complaining that charity girls were putting them out of business because like I said, there was always prostitution,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no dating.
Mm-hmm.
But when the women start coming to the cities, now it's more women, and the men who did want some action with some women, again, they would just go deal with the prostitutes,
Right.
but they wasn't taking them out.
No, you just
You
go
was
to the
going
to
to
the
the
house,
brothel,
to the
giving it
brothel.
in, and then you're going about your business. But now we have a situation where the women are being taken on dates. So after the girls start coming in, and they were perceived to be hoes because the perception at the time was that those were the only type of women who are out in public with men socially. Once society started getting over that aspect, and they went from being charity girls who was putting the prostitutes out of business.
So that's what I want to know. Like, what did that look like? Like, what made someone a charity girl
well,
different than the
well, is
prostitute?
that again, the charity girls, as it said, since they took no money for their favors, they were perceived to be giving it away as charity
And so they took no money for sex.
because they weren't prostitutes.
Okay.
They were just regular women who were engaging into socially
Dating.
into. They were dating men, quote unquote.
Yeah.
They were just dating men. But again, because dating wasn't a concept back then, it was just you're courting it or you're prostituting. You know what I'm saying? So y'all's prostitutes.
Yeah, because there's no public courting. Courting was private.
Courting was private.
And then so
It
now
was a
you
family
out there in
affair.
the streets with some man, of course, that must be some prostitute. That must be sunshine.
Yeah. But again, these women weren't prostitutes, but they were perceived to be prostitutes because at the time there was no dating. You were only prostitutes were out socially with men like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the prostitutes was getting mad, because now the men aren't going to them to pay for it.
Right.
They just, I can just, I can just go hang out with these women over here and just, casually date them, and give them a meal or two here every now and then, or take, like I said, take them out, entrance tickets,
Mm-hmm.
some food, some gifts here and there, and then and we do our thing, and then we good. Like, now the prostitutes is mad because it's like, well, we ain't got customers coming like we used to now because they dealing with these charity girls.
Mm-hmm.
But once the dating concept and of it more it being public became more acceptable, now that those girls shifted from being perceived as charity girls to shop girls.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, while dating finally became, while dating finally became acceptable, it wasn't exactly liberating for women. If the American dream was for men to work hard and become a success, the equivalent for women was to get a good job and marry your rich boss. Because now the women um, were working at these shops that these affluent men were coming in to buy stuff for their wives, or just maybe a relative, a mom or someone, and they're interacting. So think about it as the old time, like Macy's. How you used to go to Macy's. Remember, you could go buy the cologne now, and the lady will be there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the shop girls were.
Got you.
You know what I mean? Like it says the other alternative was for women to take jobs in high class department stores where rich men were likely to shop.
Mm-hmm.
These women became known as shop girls because, again, their thing was that they wanted to get a rich husband.
Gotcha.
So in order to get a rich husband, if they was working in an office, the traffic wasn't there. If they were working in some phone operation, the traffic from the men wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
The traffic from the men was only at the shops.
Mm-hmm.
So now that's when women started specifically getting these types of jobs, so they could meet these men, start going out on dating these men, and then hopefully hoping that those men would quote unquote marry them.
Oh, that's funny. That's interesting.
Very interesting
That's
stuff.
very interesting how that still is going on today. As far as
Exactly.
when you go into Macy's, you do
Exactly.
have the woman that's going around, want to spray the samples on you, and you think that's based in a retail practice because they're trying to promote the fragrance or whatever the case may be, but that's just a practice that's been rooted or implemented way back here as
Mm-hmm.
a shop girl.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the shop girls would do. They would work and try to encounter because the
These rich
traffic of the
guys, right?
men or the rich or wealthy men were at these elite shop stores like
Exactly.
Macy's or whatever the case may
Exactly.
be. And that was just that's something that they just kept and just rebranded it. Like, all right, get some testers away.
Right.
Oh,
It
that's
says
interesting. You learn something new every day.
it says several marriages and heard of a great many more where the husband was far above the wife's as a measure of the economic scale. Because,
Mm.
again, these were regular women, quote unquote regular women with regular jobs, in most cases being underpaid. But they would, need me a rich husband. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So then they was going there. Now here's the crazy part. It says here's where the next shift came. In order to attract rich men, these shop girls were caught by the irony of needing to buy the expensive items they sold. So therein became the problem because now they needed to. Again, they're dealing with rich guys who had these certain standards. So remember what I said.
Because the makeup and all that stuff was for the rich,
Well, technically, it was
the
for
wealthy,
what it's gonna
right?
say. It says in an early era, a girl from humble origins could not hope to look like the wife or daughter of a millionaire.
Mm.
But a job in a department store or a laundry gave anyone opportunities to become well versed in the signs of wealth. So what was happening was the women was coming too to these shops. So the regular girls, quote unquote, they were observing
The
how
mannerism
the
and how
mannerisms,
they
how they carry
maneuver, what they
themselves,
use,
right, what they
what they like to
use, what
wear,
they wear,
and then
how they
they
dress.
emulated that to
So remember what I said? Regular people, non-affluent people, trying to be affluent.
right, right, and I think you should break that down because that's a good segue to that.
Well, that's what
Yeah,
we'll be going into. But this is kind of like where it started.
yeah,
This is where women now, specifically the non-affluent women,
yeah.
started.
Meaning non-rich,
hmm
non-wealthy,
Now
right?
the non-rich women, this is when it all started, and this is when the makeup industry exploded.
Yeah,
Because now you had these non-affluent women who were trying to attract these rich men, but they didn't quote unquote
look,
have the look
right.
of a quote unquote woman that a rich
That was
man,
taken care of,
right? But again,
of a
they was in a
well-kept
they
woman.
was in a rock between a hard spot though, because they couldn't really afford this stuff either
Yeah,
that the rich women were using. So
I guess the term would have been used as the kept woman compared to an unkept woman.
exactly.
Hmm.
So it says to that end, shop girls studied the well-to-do female customers seeking to imitate their look, which led to the business world to pounce on this new type of consumer who sought little but to impress.
Mm.
So that's when they said the cosmetic industry exploded in the 1920s. Previously, only prostitutes and actresses painted. And it wasn't even, the term makeup hadn't even been invented yet.
It was painting.
It was just like painted. And then, again, only prostitutes and the actresses painted. At the time, it says Victorians had viewed natural outer beauty as a sign of clean living, but around 1900, more and more women were starting to apply cosmetics. By 1912, the Baltimore Sun reported that even respectable society women are seen on our streets in fashionable promenades with painted faces.
Mm.
So makeup wasn't even
Yeah.
it was looked down upon as something that only actresses and prostitutes did.
Right.
Think about that though.
Yeah, it makes sense because you have two entities that are kind of they have value in kind of emulating something else.
Mm-hmm.
So of course the actress, she needs to have the makeup to, she's being shot in this film or movie or whatever the case may be. So is a creative
Right.
aspect to that
Yeah.
where, we're trying to recreate a
A certain look.
fictitious world.
Yeah, exactly.
So we need a certain look, and then the same thing with the prostitute. We're trying to create this
It's fantasy.
fantasy.
Right.
Which it wasn't part that fantasy and that look wasn't a part of the everyday look.
Mm-mm.
And I think that's where we went wrong at, because now the women, modern day women, they're trying to they got this fantasy look that they're like
Right.
holding on to.
Yes.
Like that they live and die by. Like everyone has this fantasy look, and that's what they don't understand. Like, that's the woman. That's what the man went at the strip club.
Right,
Or,
right.
that's what the man went at the brothel.
Right.
Or that's what the director wants on set.
Right.
But that's not what the affluent man wants from his wife at home.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
And they missed it, and they kind of put themselves in a trick bag.
But it was also too business season and opportunity. New consumer.
Oh yeah.
We got new.
Right.
We can.
We can capitalize.
So it says the counter society's negative association with painted faces. The cosmetic industry invented a new term, makeup. Because again, there was a negative association with a woman painting a face on.
Yeah, so you had to
so we had to rebrand it.
Yeah,
as not as painted face, but makeup, and that's when that industry exploded.
CoverGirl, Maybelline,
right? It says not only was making yourself up permissible now, advertisers were soon claiming it was positively virtuous. By making herself up, a woman showed that she valued her femininity and was willing to spend time and money on her appearance. So again, it's all puppet strings
for the woman.
It was all social engineering.
And none of that has anything to do with. Now, one of those instances was the interest of the man, a pillar or a component of those decisions being made. That was all women making decisions based on other women and themselves. It wasn't to get the man. They just figured that they needed to do this because this is what the rich woman, the other woman that they were looking at. They were coming in these stores.
The women they were emulating,
the ones that they were aspiring to be.
Yep.
They seen the way they dress, and they was looking at this and looking at that. Thinking that was going to get them to be a kept woman.
Right. So then women went from now being charity girls to shop girls to the last one, which was the it girl. It says now, talk about the it girl. It says two other now familiar concepts also sprung up around the time. Previously, people sought to be known by traits that emphasized morality, such as character and virtue. Now, this is important. The concept of quote-unquote personality, which places emphasis on surface traits, had been regarded in the negative reference in terms of personality disorders.
Okay.
So starting around 1920, however, experts began to grant that healthy individuals had personalities too. So prior to this whole concept of dating, to be said that you got a personality was a bad thing. And also too, as a woman, you again, you were sought. Men were seeking you out based upon your character, your like I said, your virtue, your values, your views, not how you looked, not your personality,
not your personality.
Right. It was about you. The essence of you, not the depth of you.
They were looking for virtuous women.
Yeah, the depth of you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like not just she looks pretty.
Yeah.
The fantasy, you know what I mean?
No.
But then that's again with a little social engineering and rebranding. Now personality is a good thing. So now personality replaced character.
And so now fast forward now.
That's all we see is personality.
Too much personality.
Yes. No character at all.
No character at all. And too much women competing with each other, emulating this look.
And so, how did the social engineering go down? The concept began popping up in romance.
It did what?
It says the concept began popping up in romance literature and articles about dating in the sense that personality was like painting, a way a woman could make herself up in order to appeal to men. Hence why today,
damn, this is rooted in fucking shit from.
This is why you got to
years ago.
understand the history
Decades
of dating,
ago, and they don't
the
even
invention
realize.
of dating.
And
right.
y'all women probably don't even realize why y'all doing what y'all doing.
This is why they're doing what they're doing.
Wow.
This is why they're doing
interesting.
This is why they're doing
That's very interesting.
So again, as men, we have to understand these things as well, because now knowing these things, you can realize, like, so as men, you're not wrong, quote unquote, for wanting your wife to have a character, to have traits, virtuous traits in a sense. But now women are kind of like in a trick bag, because it's just like they're still trying to act like the it girl, thinking that being the it girl is all the man wants. But it's just like, no, like, not the it girl is what the guy wants for fun. But the it girl is not what the guy wants for a wife.
No, the it girl wasn't at home.
Mm-mm.
This it girl was this girl that y'all created amongst yourselves.
Exactly.
Because y'all was trying to compete with that girl, that wife, or whatever the case may be. And then y'all was selling these products, and then y'all thought to consume these products, and that would make men choose you. And then y'all implemented having personality. Which was, if you define, let's break down personality. So that was, more women had, they were speaking about their feelings, what they wanted. You get into that because before, I'm sure women were more quiet, more ladylike, modest, more easygoing. You know what I'm saying? And so now you get this personality where you have a say so, you have an opinion. You doing it like this because I don't know about that. Forget, I mean, you got all this variations of personality of a woman's personality that is not it's unlimited.
So here's another name. It says, in the context of dating, to have a good personality or to simply have personality meant to have charisma. This was an asset whether you were selling handkerchiefs or selling yourself. So Eleanor Glenn, writing for Cosmopolitan in 1926. So Cosmopolitan was already social engineering back in the 20s.
They still around today.
Still around to today. It says, refer to personality simply as it, quote unquote it. That's what personality was, it. And it says that it was a mysterious kind of animal magnetism. And they said, and she wrote, with it, you win all men, and if you are a woman, no, it says with it you win all men if you are a woman, and all women if you are a man. So then this is when the concept of having quote unquote game, charisma came into play. You gotta have that personality. You gotta be able to smooth talk on. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be able to what's sweet nothing.
Yeah. I hear you.
That's when all that start coming around. And then it goes on and says, the concept of the it girl was born. Bao's it girl, of course, sought to marry the boss, in this case, the son of the store manager. So again, remember, this whole thing is because we are reshaping courtship. We are redefining courtship into dating now. So now we're not even going through the process of being intentional about our futures together.
No.
It's just all about us, just again, women building themselves up to look like this it girl that they think that the men want. And then some of these men clumsily just following in hook, line, and sinker. And now we're here. It says the notion that it can be developed led to the origin of another phenomenon, the dating advice book. So that's why we see the dating industry in a sense. On the men's side, you got the pickup artists, and again on the women's side, you got the I don't know what their version of the pickup artist would be, but that's where it all comes from. Is this concept is when we began to rebrand courting as dating,
right?
And now full circle, it says What did it say? Beauty is no longer vanity, it is use. A waitress or a shop girl could be fired at any time simply because someone her boss found prettier showed up and asked for the job.
Mm.
It says, as dating rituals changed, more authorities panicked at every turn. After petting came into vogue in the modern girls' vamps. What? My bad, y'all. It says, after petting came into vogue in the 1920s, my apologies. For example, Weigel cites as a Times article from 1922, mothers complain that modern girls vamp their sons at petting parties. Those evil modern girls. So ultimately, now we've moving full circle to where now we at parties where we're
Mm-hmm.
now women are or men, well, women are organizing these petting parties, is what they call, where it
Mm.
was for the men just to come see the work, you know what I'm saying? I like that, you know what I'm saying? And then boom, they going off and doing their thing. Or fast forward, as we say now, going to the club. So then in full circle, that's how dating was invented.
And that's how the club started.
Exactly. That's how dating was invented. Because again, socially, men and women didn't function.
Yeah, because I remember even at one point you would go to the club to date. And now it's like you better not go to the club to date. Like it's constantly changing. But it's good to see the origin of it and how it evolved and the basis and premise that it evolves from
Hmm.
and what it involved to now in 2025. That's deep.
That's very deep.
That's very deep. I implore all y'all, a lot of y'all women to read this. You
So we'll
know,
post a link in the
yeah,
description. But again, I thought it was very important for us to go through this breakdown because, again, I'm just in 2025. We're in my opinion, what I'm seeing is that you got predominantly women. They want these relationships. They want a long term, serious, intimate relationship with a man. But again, their problem is everything's about them, and they're trying to, brand themselves as these it girls based solely on the fantasies based of their look. And because when you listen to the women, I'm a bad bitch. Look at me.
yeah, they all
Look
say
at
that.
me.
Yeah,
Look at me.
I'm a bad bitch.
You
Why
know what I
wouldn't he
mean?
want me? Look, you see me?
Look at my like I put all this work into having this bad body. Look at my look at me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's what they say.
They
Literally, look
they
at me.
they men would want me because of how I look, but it's just like nah, baby. Like, and unfortunately, again, women have misinterpreted men's desire for fantasy for marriage intention,
Yep,
and now we're here full circle to where women are complaining about
not getting married.
not getting married and how there's not enough good men. But the reality is it's not that they're not a good enough good men. It's not that men don't value marriage. It's just that men are not looking to marry it girls.
Never been.
Men,
Even when you look at
yeah.
the origin of it, like the it girl was never on the high list of the man.
Her goal was to get a rich guy.
Right.
Its girl's mission was to get the rich guy, but the rich guy mission was not to get the it girl.
And
He would have fun with her.
the it girl motivation was just a unwealthy and an unkept girl.
Mm-hmm.
Was the motivation to be an it girl. It wasn't that the man was looking for it girls. You know what
So
I'm saying?
as we just kind of said this, it made me realize like, is this the beginning? Was that the beginning of hypergamy?
Yeah, yeah. That's the beginning of all that shit.
Yeah.
The club, the it girl, and
Makeup.
the makeup, and all that. Like that was the beginning of it. And then it just, I think we got stuck there.
Yes.
We got stuck there at the at
Yes.
at the extreme end of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Now it's just like everybody like wants is the it girl. Everybody has charisma and everybody got game, everybody got swag, and and all this that's all the surface stuff
Mm-hmm.
that you see when you're dealing with dating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have to be careful, and that's why we raised the question courtship versus dating. Because now with dating, you're dealing with all this surface stuff,
Mm-hmm.
all this it girl, all this painted faces, aka makeup, and you're dealing with with this fantasy that they're projecting this fantasy look, and men want it for just what it is, the fantasy to play with, the fuck. But they misinterpret it as Oh, that mean you want me? Nobody want you. We don't even know who you is.
Right, 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 right.
You don't even know who you
Like I said,
is.
character and virtue have been thrown out the window in it for personality and looks.
And as you look at this, the beginning of this, and what I noticed, what the men were looking for and still looking for today. Well, that's deep. They were looking for the virtuous woman,
Yep.
but we're still looking for it today.
Mm-hmm.
What the man wanted hasn't changed. It was the woman's perception
Mm-hmm.
of what the man wanted, and they felt they had to compete amongst themselves to get the attention of the man. So
Exactly.
what they projected was a look that was only synonymous with brothels, prostitutes, or actors and actresses.
Mm-hmm.
So they thought that that's what it was to get the man that they wanted. Almost like today, they think that they got to have the cum catchers on their eyes. They got to have 5 pounds of makeup on, weaves and wigs and all that, and BBLs, injections, and all that shit, Botox in their face and all that. That's all that stuff you're doing to compete with the woman next to you.
Mm-hmm.
But that ain't what the man is looking for.
For a wife.
Yeah, for a wife.
He'll have sex with you.
Yeah, we looking for that to have fun with, to
Yes.
play with, but then that ain't gonna. That's not longevity. The man is looking for the virtuous woman, someone
That character, that
substance.
depth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Substance, right. And a lot of women today believe that because they do have this surface stuff, that's what makes them have substance and depth and
Wow.
character. But it's just like, nah, like, and it has to there has to be something hardwired in us men to be able to spot that in these women from all throughout time. You know what I'm saying? Since the early 1900s now into 2025, because to your point, men are still looking for the virtuous woman, the depth, the character, not just the visual fantasy. So we got a video. I guess we'll end out.
End it with the video.
Yeah, we'll end out on that one video where my brother is breaking down the difference between courtship and dating.
And there is extreme difference between dating and courtship. I have done both. I have done both. Trust me. I've been on both sides of the fence, right? Dating comes with you showing up. You have an interest for a person. You show up and you see what happens. You just go with the vibes. Not much intentionality there. Maybe y'all speak about marriage. Maybe y'all don't. Y'all ask each other just a little cute questions. What's your favorite color and all that stuff, right? But courtship is very intentional. Courtship says, I'm not just here showing up, but I'm actually starting with the beginning in mind. I'm coming here for marriage. Are you coming with me? Courtship takes more patience, more diligence, more intentionality. You understanding the person's character. Therefore, when their flaws show up, when their humanity show up, you don't overlook it, you address it, but it makes you stay. Dating says, our time has passed. We was cool, but I'm not cool with the conflict that has been caused here. The reason why that's a major issue is because in relationships, period, you get to a point where you either separate at some point or you continue to come together. And when that separation period happens, I'm not talking about physically, but I'm talking about mentally, emotionally, spiritually sometimes. You look at the person's character over time. Intentionality looks at it and go, this is a bad season, but you don't have a bad heart. Dating makes you overlook that step, overlook that process, and just go, I could find better. Courting is the best way to go.
All right, moving along to our third topic: universal wealth principles. When it comes to generational wealth and economic resilience, the Jewish community offers time-tested principles that many others could benefit from circulating the dollar within the community to prioritizing education, trade skills, and ownership. These strategies aren't exclusive, but they are intentional. We'll highlight the mindset and habits that have empowered Jewish families to build lasting wealth across generations. Let's dive in.
All right, so last week, ladies and gentlemen, we covered the first four principles. So now we'll go ahead and drop the video, cover these next four principles, then we'll go ahead and dive into some dialogue.
What makes Jewish people so wealthy? In my last video, I said that Jews make up only 2.4% of the US population, but about 1 in 3 American millionaires are Jewish. Check out my last video if you haven't seen it. And after decades of working with many Jewish clients when I was an investment advisor, here are 4 more wealth principles I learned from them. Number 5, they focused on being rich rather than looking rich. They weren't out there flexing. They didn't feel the need to be flashy. They drove reliable cars, not all luxury cars. Why is that? Because they cared more about being wealthy than looking wealthy. Number 6, they were selectively extravagant and prudently frugal. Here's what I noticed. They dropped serious money on education, on experiences, on their investments, or giving to a cause that they really cared about. But some of the same people would also clip coupons at the grocery store. They knew when to spend big and when to hold back. It wasn't about being cheap. It was about being intentional. Number 7, they saw sales as a noble profession. Many of them encourage their kids to go into sales. Why? Because sales creates opportunities. It teaches communication, it builds resilience, and it uncaps your income. They didn't look down on the sales profession. They saw it as a gateway to entrepreneurship and financial freedom. Lastly, they practice group economics. They did business with each other a lot. It wasn't exclusionary because they still work with me and others. I mean, I had a lot of Jewish clients, but they had a deep commitment to supporting their own. They hired each other, they referred each other, and they funded each other's business ventures. And that's something we need more of in the Black community. Not just to support each other, but to circulate the dollar. You see, you don't have to be Jewish to apply these principles. Wisdom is wisdom, and it'll work for anybody.
Yeah, I like that last sentence. Is like
Powerful.
was paramount. Like, you don't got to be Jewish. This is not just relegated to Jewish community. Like, it's wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
and anyone can implement wisdom
Yep.
and benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what was the first thing you said?
Focus on
Being rich rather than looking rich.
right, and that's actually the most crucial piece of wisdom I believe people in America overlook. The average American overlooks that piece of wisdom by 10. We see it every day
Yeah.
because it'd be funny to me when we live in Los Angeles, so we have a lot of people from a lot of places. But it blows my mind when people come and they're just like, oh, I got they like I said, they're adorning themselves in all these luxury labels.
Mm-hmm.
They're driving these luxury vehicles, and it's like, and they're walking around with this air of supremacy in a sense
Mm-hmm.
because of what they wearing and what they driving. But it's just like, to truly wealthy people, to truly rich people, like, you guys look like fools.
And I've been around some wealthy people, and
Hookahs.
and
Hokas.
and I remember one time when
They
you
wear
were
hokas.
when you were out in the when you were working, and you took a picture of this woman, the older woman, and how I think everything was Chanel,
Hmm.
but it wasn't the flashy version
Oh,
of
I know. I remember
Chanel.
right. It was an old white
It
lady,
was, yeah.
and she was looking bad. And it was, and like I said, I noticed that it was Chanel, but it wasn't the regular
It
Chanel.
wasn't the flashy
It wasn't
Chanel.
the flat. It was like some real clothes.
Yeah.
But I just look. I remember that day, and I was just like, man, that older woman looks nice. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But it was more so nice from the perspective of she looked like she was rich,
Mhm.
but she looked like but also that she believed that she was rich, and that she embodied the traits though.
Mhm.
It wasn't that she was just rocking and stuff to try to like look it. She was
Mhm.
being it.
Yeah, she was being it. That's why you can
It
when
was a
you like
difference.
when you are rich, you can get the Chanel shirt that don't have the big C on it. You know what I mean? You can get the Gucci suit that don't got Gucci coming down the sleeve
Hmm.
or all across the back Gucci. You know what I mean, it's like, if you're rich, you're rich, but you don't have to put value in looking rich.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, looking rich, who does that benefit? I had that concept about vehicles. like you want to get these rims, and
Mm-hmm.
you want to adorn your car with all this. You want to have a Mercedes Benz, whatever the case may be. But you're in the car most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole thing that you're putting value on, you don't even take part in. That's for the people that when you driving down the street and that car pass by,
Right.
they're getting the benefit of that.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing your rims spin, or seeing
Facts.
how the rims coordinate with your license plate and the tint on your windows. Like, you're not getting no gratification out of that
At all.
That don't help you.
Right.
You're in the same car behind the same steering wheel, pushing the same gas and brake pedal to get the vehicle to move.
Exactly.
So therefore, putting all this value now, if you have it, and that's just the car that you want, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But when you make it a priority to get this car, so it make you feel better, or you think it validates you, or make you better than the next person or something. That's where we lose it at. That's where we go astray at. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's funny. Everybody that I know who focuses on being rich as opposed to looking rich, they always look regular.
Yep, you have
They
to.
drive regular cars.
Mm-hmm.
Now they still got the Benzes. They
Yeah.
still got the Teslas. They
Yeah.
they still got it.
Mm-hmm.
But on a day-to-day basis, you would never know.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
You would never know.
No, you wouldn't. And that's how these other communities are winning, because their focus is not on looking rich. Like we our community, we thrive on looking a certain way. Like, it's all about looks.
Trying to be the it person.
We can't
Check out the previous topic, ladies and
I'm
gentlemen.
just
You'll
saying,
get
like,
it.
it always
Comes
circles
full
back,
circle, right?
doesn't it? Yeah, like everybody wants to be this it person with charisma
Mm-hmm.
and personality. You know what I'm saying? Instead of being that person of substance, instead of alluding to it or portraying it or projecting it, how about be that?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's where we stumble on. We stumble on that a lot, because I I had to get out of that. When you're younger, you want to be in the Jordans, you want to have Louis Vuitton, Gucci, whatever the name brand is out there. And then it is the level of maturity
Yes.
that you have to come to, like,
Mhm.
as you grow older. Like, why am I paying $5,000 for this outfit, and it's the same thing that this outfit costs $50? you
Right.
know and I'm a one. I have mastered, like, it ain't what you wear, it's just how you make the outfit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about how you put it together. I'll be happy going in a Ross and any of these stores where, and I put something together and I stand right next to somebody with a $10,000 outfit on, and I bet you I get more compliments, because it's all about how you put together and how you carry yourself, and who you are.
Mm-hmm.
The outfit shouldn't wear you. You wear the outfit. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? That you don't accent what the outfit is. The accent only highlights who you are.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It brings who you are out, not make you what you're trying to be because of what you got on. Like, that's not how that go. But
So again, focus on being rich and wealthy, not just trying to look rich and wealthy. And that kind of you just kind of talked about the next point, which was what was it? Being selectively extravagant and prudently frugal.
yeah,
So to your point, you know how to you've developed the ability now to go to Ross. That's you being prudently frugal.
yeah, yeah.
As opposed to being selectively extravagant by just everything I buy has to be luxury.
I gotta be on Rodeo Drive. I gotta get the new shit tunes when it's dropped.
My socks,
I
my
got
slippers,
right,
my underwear, my
right,
pants, my shirt, my coat.
right,
And cause I be just looking at people when I see it, I just shake my head because I'm just like, oh, you just don't know.
right.
And it's like, y'all got to start understanding that y'all ultimately are marks. Y'all are making yourself out to be marked, like for cons, and conman by mark, I mean. Because again, when y'all are walking around looking rich as opposed to being rich, focusing on being extravagant as opposed to prudently frugal, like you said, business sees that.
Oh yeah.
And don't let the wrong person see you, because again, they're gonna be able to. They said they're gonna be able to manipulate you into buying some dumb shit 10 times easier than they can somebody else
Of
because
course.
they know that again you focused on making sure that you have this look.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
wrote I gotta pull it up real quick because it goes
You put your pants on one leg at a time.
it ties in perfectly with what I just said. But it was a quote I made recently
Mm-hmm.
on the Facebookers, and it was I said it was something about the ego and how that makes you.
I remember that picture.
Which one?
Scroll up, go over here. Yeah.
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it at? I put a quote here. It said I said the stronger the ego, the weaker the self. So when you're focusing on looking rich, that's just your ego really at play
It
because you're
damn
just
sure
trying to
is.
like look at you know you're trying to make yourself look a certain way because you want people to perceive you as having a certain status that you think is going to make them treat you a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Overcompensating.
Overcompensating, right? But
Mm-hmm.
again, all that really is a representation of is your weakness.
Mm-hmm.
But around the wrong people, you go get got. You know what I'm saying? You go
Mm-hmm.
get taken advantage of. You go get exploited because again, they already know you. They see you. They see you from a mile away because they can see that big ass Gucci and Chanel.
And they know you're a fool.
Right.
And then they said, then we read somewhere where they make certain clothes for certain demographics,
I
and
have
then
read that.
yeah,
So it's just like there's two Gucci's in the sense. There's
right.
two Louis. You know, there's
Mm-hmm.
two Chanel. And there's a version of it that they sell to people who just want to look rich.
The flashy
And then there's a version that they sell to people who actually focus on being rich.
and on quality.
And it's the
Because
quality, right?
sometimes these more expensive items are better quality.
Hmm.
To be fair, what I'm saying, that's what you're usually buying when you have the means to buy it. You're buying better quality,
Hmm.
and so therefore, Gucci's going to make a T-shirt. They're gonna have one plain T-shirt like this, and then they got another T-shirt that got Gucci here, Gucci there, and Gucci on
Hmm.
the back. And of course, you know the one that we tend to get. But it also said it was select. You have selective, um, be selectively extravagant in these areas. One was education.
Yeah.
One was in your experiences,
Yeah.
which was very
So
good.
going on trips or
Yeah,
things like that, or even
yeah,
places around town.
yeah, just getting out and exploring your horizon and going to places you never been, learning things you never learned or you didn't know, and just experiences.
Hmm.
Experiences doesn't necessarily mean traveling.
Yeah, exactly.
I
It
just
could be
want to be
going to a
clear.
museum. It
It
could be
could
going to a
be
play.
or accomplishing some of your fears, some things that you know was
Fear
scared
of
to do,
heights.
heights or jumping out of plane or experiences. You never been to the beach. You never been to a Broadway play or you never whatever. Those are experiences. Um, Extravagant in your investments.
Hmm.
That was another one. So where that's where I'm at. I'm learning like anytime I get extra money, a large income, that goes to investments. That goes, the majority of that goes away to my high yielding accounts, investments, and things like that. That's what I'm like strictly extravagant about. And those things are just like some of the things that compared to being extravagant over things that don't have any value or no meaning,
Right.
or things that's just just gonna get attention to you, which, like you said, your ego.
Hmm.
That's an ego driven mentality, and you got to be prudently frugal.
Yep.
That means you got to know when when to buy, when you got to know when to go to Costco and buy the pack of steaks instead of going to Steak 48 every night because you got a
Right.
taste for steak.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You got to know when to, like we just said, go see what Ross got, before you go marching down Rodeo Drive. It's like, you got to know when to be frugal and when you're not. And then if you want to be extravagant, you want to make sure you're being extravagant when education, your experiences, your investments, those things and those areas.
So before we move on to the next one, I remember growing up, I used to watch my granny be prudently frugal.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to things like education, she spared no expense.
Oh, your granny got money. I already know.
You know, she spared no expense, and it was like, but as a little kid growing up, having, you know, being indoctrinated to be a consumer, you know, I'm looking at it like, oh, you never buy us toys and video games, because she never bought that kind of stuff for us, like ever, like.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to education, bro, we always had the best top of the line of everything, like no matter what.
Oh
You know
yeah,
what I'm
they
saying?
family got it going on. Like if you're a female out there, you better try to get that Crawley last name. I'm trying to tell you, because they got it going all over you. They own half the properties in the city. They got
I wouldn't say half. Well, we own enough. We own enough. But
far as we talk about, far as where we come from and what we're used to,
yeah,
they got the city on lock.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
Anytime.
but see, and that's the crazy part, because growing up, I vividly remember people looking at who my grandparents were and assuming that, oh, he's rich. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody, the boys and the girls, like
Mm-hmm.
always, like that was really he's the rich kid. Now
Mm-hmm.
to me, I'm looking like, what you talking about? Like
Right.
I'm going to the same school as y'all.
Right.
I'm wearing the same clothes as y'all. I'm eating the same lunches as y'all. I'm going to the same field trips as y'all.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I go to my mom's house when I leave here. I don't go to their house. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But that was like my first education in this perception of people thinking that you're rich, and then expecting something for it, because again, the girls would expect me to treat them differently than every other guy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because there was this perception that I was this rich kid, but it was like what is Shaq? Was it Shaq? He was just like, I'm rich, like y'all poor.
Oh, talking about his kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I like, and it was just like I got that I learned that lesson very early in my childhood, being with my grandparents, and it was a good lesson for me to learn, because now, because now it's like, all right, as an adult, I've lived that life. You know what I'm saying? I've never, like I said, strived to be extravagant in that regard. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I've never did that. I've never tried to be the guy who was running around with all the labels. You know, even though I had it, because I remember, for another example, moving day when I went to college. That first day, you know, we were all moving in, and
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that for some reason, like my carts was always was chunkier than most of the kids' charts. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
carts coming in. You know what I mean? And then I remember um, we got moved all in, and then we went to like Costco, like you just
Mm-hmm.
said, and we bought a whole nother round of stuff, moved all that stuff in.
Wow.
Then my dad came and went to another store, got some more stuff, moved all that in.
Wow.
So while everybody was finished moving in, like literally, I was still moving stuff in. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Still going to get stuff, and people noticed it.
Of course.
They was looking like, wow, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
who's this? But again, once the dust settled, and now, you know, my parents are gone, my grandparents are gone. Now that's when everyone starts coming to my
Yeah.
dorm room, like,
Everybody.
hey, what's up, bro?
Hey,
I
who's this guy?
I noticed everyone, there were some people who were extra friendly, extra nice, you know,
Mm-hmm.
both the guys and the girls. And but again, looking back on it, those people who were just trying to befriend me, and with the hope that, you know, it would my quote unquote perceived
Transactional.
richness, yeah, my perceived richness would go to, you know, would spill off onto them on some level, shape, form, fashion. But again, mentally, I didn't think like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I never, behaved in that manner, to where I was the guy who was like, oh, you know, drinks on me, or, you know, Denny's on me, you know. But then there were people who was doing that.
Yeah.
The kids who didn't have it, you know what I mean? And that's what I began to notice. That was kind of like one of my first life lessons in college, was realizing, like, wait a minute, like, y'all just recklessly spending money like it
Yeah.
grows on trees. And then
Yeah.
there's this expectation for me to do it for them, and I was just like, nah.
Yeah.
And then of course they're, oh, you just selfish, or you just, because again, especially the young ladies, I experienced that with them more than the guys, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
it was just kind of like interesting and weird to me, because I was just like damn, did people really be acting like that? Because that was my first time away from home,
Mm-hmm.
around strangers in that regards, and I just remember thinking like, wow, like all these things that I've been being told, and the story of my life is still true to this day. It still rings true, because even again, going back to being in grade school, like people seeing my grandparent, especially my papa, he pulling up. And your grandfather is rich. You know what I'm saying? He looks rich, but it was just like, yeah, at that point in his life, he began to quote unquote look rich because he had spent his whole life focusing on being rich to put himself in the position to actually have it, to then be able to spend it on whatever he wants, including his grandkids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a total different dynamic, and it's almost like the blueprint, that we're talking about. Like your grandfather is a living example of all the things and principles that we've been talking about
Everything,
as it
bro.
relates to wealth and finances. Going on to the next point. But this was an interesting one too because, well, let me state it first. The principle is they value sales as a noble profession.
Yes.
And that was interesting to me because, nowadays and even when I was coming up, working in sales was like a negative connotation. And I still don't I don't want to sell shit. I don't want to be trying to beg you to buy nothing.
But see, that's why we view sales as
Yeah.
a negative thing, because we have this mindset,
Yep.
whether it's because we were told it or we just misinterpreted that,
hmm
I want to be trying to sell something, trying to convince people to buy something that they don't want. But the reality is that was our misinterpretation of it, because as they said, being in sales is the gateway to entrepreneurship, but it also too doesn't put a cap on your income.
Yeah, it creates opportunity. They said it says it teaches communication, it builds resilience, and like you said, uncaps your income. What are like the four principles of sales? And then once when he explained, the creating of opportunity and teaching communication, I started to look at it and I was like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense because when you're in sales, now you have a commodity, you have something tangible. We're not talking about necessarily selling something for someone else, like at uh, Gucci and you selling the Gucci clothes. We're talking about sales, far as sales coming from the fruits of your own labor, or your family business or something like that. Like, so when you have a product or a commodity, now you could barter, you could trade. I could come to you and say, I got 5 barrels of corn, that I picked, and I see you over there. You got some wheat over there. I give you a barrel of corn for a barrel of wheat, and then through that, that takes communication. You learn how to negotiate. You learn how to barter. You learn how to do things, and it builds resilience. You know how to sustain and get through hard times or whatever the case may be, and it uncaps your income because however far you want to take your product or whatever it is that you have, it's totally up to you, and there's no limits on that. Everybody could want a bushel of corn by the time you finish.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But also too, we have to learn how to sell and
Yeah.
realize that selling isn't just about trying to force people to buy stuff. It's really ultimately about you being able to tell stories, and only tell those stories to people who want the stories told to them. So it's like, again, if we're selling cups, everybody doesn't want a cup, but there are people who do want cups. So part of your job as a salesperson is to only be having sales conversations with people who actually want what you have to sell. So you have to learn how to quote unquote prospect. You have to learn how to qualify your prospects. You have to learn how to quote unquote deliver, your sales message to them. And you got to learn how to close them so you can collect the money. But you're not going to learn that if you just operate off this false belief or this limiting belief, I should say, that sales, like, again, snake oil salesman. And a lot of the reason why sales gets a bad rep too is because of the media that we expose our to on a day-to-day basis. The movies, the TV shows, the magazines. There's always some snake oil salesman. You know what I mean? There's always some swindler. There's always some con man that's put on the screen or put in front of us as this salesman, this con artist, and then so we looking at that thinking like, and then to your point, that's why I say, "Ooh, I don't want to do that." You know what I'm saying? Because that's wrong. That's
And then
bad.
we also seen the sales under the connotation of us working in like a department store. those type of sales. We really haven't grown up in a generation where we're selling a commodity that we created.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, now things again like that. There's more entrepreneurs and business owners. T-shirt makers and fashion designers, and like this is becoming more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, the general consensus is we really didn't have our own product to sell. And then when we did have things to sell, we kind of moved away from that,
Mm-hmm.
to chase corporate,
Mm-hmm.
to be in a corporate standing where we ain't doing nothing but making the person at the top more richer. You know what I'm saying?
But the
So,
funny part about sales, Will, is also too is that even though a lot of us don't like it, we all engage in it on a day to day basis
yeah,
because we got to sell ourselves.
yeah,
Like no matter what, we have to sell ourselves. If we
true
want
that.
that new job, we want that new promotion. If we want this new friend, we want this new girlfriend or boyfriend. Well, no matter what we want, we have to sell ourselves in order to get it.
True that. True
And
that.
so that's what I'm saying. We just have to start reimagining our relationship with sales,
Mm-hmm.
both on a personal and professional level, so that we can just start develop a healthy attitude, belief, and value around sales,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can then start carrying that forward by developing the proper skills to do it properly, and
Mm-hmm.
then go out into the world and do it and hunt. Because to your point, we when you come up when you're a creator, anybody that's creating, so like technically us right now, we are creating a product in this
Mm-hmm.
show. And in order for this show to go from where it's at to where it's going to require a level of us selling ourselves
Right.
to whoever we identify as qualified prospects for, as buyers
Mm-hmm.
for our product. And so again, we have to go hunt, and that's really what it means to be a hunter. Like John Hope Bryan says, every organization needs the hunt. I mean, a hunter. They need a skinner. They need a cook. And I will add one more. They need a cleaner. But that hunter, that's the person that goes out into the world and kills,
Mm-hmm.
aka sales. They're the
Mm-hmm.
rainmaker. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens if you ain't taking down no carcasses.
Right.
You know what I mean? Nothing happens. Your skinners, your cooks, and your cleaners can't do anything until you bring
So
home
you
the
bring
bacon.
something home.
You know what I'm
You
saying?
gotta bring us home something to cook,
You gotta bring it home. So
skin, and clean.
everybody, every man, every woman, in a sense, has the ability to be that hunter for themselves and for their family, aka the organization. And the sooner you begin to understand that about yourself and your natural ability to do it, the quicker you can get to uncapping your income, uncapping your ability to tap into unlimited opportunities, so that you can create the life that you want for yourself.
In a way that it builds resilience. I just thought about it because everyone's not gonna buy what you're selling.
Mm-mm.
Everyone's not
Even
going
the
to,
people who need it.
and yeah, everybody's not going to sign up for your subscription. Everyone's not going to want to date you, marry you, be in partnership with you, friendship with you, whatever the case may be. It's not a guarantee. Yes, 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 yes. I'll buy how many where I sign. You're going to get no's,
Mm-hmm.
based on a litany of things. Whether it's something that you projected or didn't project.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get no's. You're going to get rejection, and through rejection, resilience is created and built.
But before we move on, one of the reasons why we have a problem with sales is because, like you alluded to, the rejection component of it.
Yeah.
But that rejection is only taken on so hard by us because we're still stuck in that school system mentality of having to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
having to have the right answer, and having to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing we got to work ourselves out of. Like, we got to get ourselves out of that mentality of thinking that if we try to sell some and then it doesn't work, or we don't make the successful sale, that now we're a failure
Right.
and we need to pack it up. It's just like, nah, you just got to understand that you're just there as a salesman to plant the seed, and the seed, once the seed is planted, it is going to blossom if the person legitimately needs what you have to sell. Because again, just because they don't buy it on the first day does not mean that they're not going to buy it down the line.
Right.
And that's what I think we fail to understand too about sales is we get so adamant about making that sale on that first attempt. And then if we don't, then we get rejected. So now we're just like, oh, okay, never go back. But it's just like, nah, like they just didn't want it. They didn't need it right now. But how many times have somebody tried to sell something to you that you didn't need it, that you didn't buy it on the first or second or the third time, but that fourth time you called them like, hey,
Yep.
you still got them widgets? Yeah, I need one right now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I need 3 of them.
yeah, I need 3 of them. You know what I'm saying? And now you like, oh shit. But again, if you hadn't even made the efforts to at least plant that seed that first time,
Absolutely.
then you never would have been able to get that sale when it came to that fourth opportunity.
Absolutely.
So learn how to sell, ladies and gentlemen. There's a good book I recommend. It's called Story Brand by Donald Miller. And that book is going to help you learn how to tell stories that make people want to take advantage of whatever it is you have to offer.
Oh, cool.
Including
Excellent.
you.
So there's one more gem here. The eighth and final attribute of this community. They practice group economics. Deep commitment to supporting each other.
Yeah.
Not that they just only support each other, they support other people, but definitely starting with supporting each other primarily first and intentionally.
Yes.
A lot of these topics, surround intentions. Having intention. If you go back to the tariffs, the intention is to prosper the American people. When you go to relationships compared to courtship, to dating, courtship is more intentional. And then as we get to this topic, having wealth is intentional. You have to do things with intention to get the results that you want. And this practicing group economics is a huge component that, this community, and we're just using the Jewish community as an example, they have really like taken advantage of that.
Yeah.
They really like, even if you go into the Jewish communities, you can see all the Jewish stores like in the same little area, and they all just all within their community. If it's something they want to eat, they go on right there. If it's a furniture store, light fixture store, boom, 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 we all going there. You don't see a whole bunch of Jews traveling to Target. You don't see a whole bunch of Jews in Macy's. You don't see a whole bunch of Jews at the Fox Hills Mall. For what? They don't need. We got our own community right here, and we're self-sufficient and self-supportive, and that's huge. That they circulate the dollar in their own community. What was the number for that? How often the dollar circulates?
Let's pull it up real quick. Let's find, because that is important information.
I think it said 54 times.
Does money circulate in the Jewish community? Somebody been searching for it. So it says a study cited by the city of Detroit.gov indicates that $1 circulates 20 days within the Jewish community. This is significantly longer than the estimated circulation time of 6 hours within the Black community and 30 days in the Asian community, according to the same study.
City of Detroit. I questioned Detroit.
A Black Star Project study on the racial wealth gap calculates that $1 circulates 6 hours in the Black community, 20 days in the Jewish community, and 30 days in the Asian community.
Okay. Yeah, so pretty much, like it circulates, and that's what we have to do.
So we got to go from 6. So we got to take it in baby steps as far as, Americans of African descent. 30. We got to go from 6 hours to 24. We can start there.
We got to build our communities, though.
It's great. It's funny you say that. I saw somebody recently say, there's no such thing as Black communities. There's only Black neighborhoods.
Right.
And when he said that, I kind of had to really sit down real quick and think about that, because I was like, you know what, brother?
You're absolutely right.
You're absolutely right.
You're absolutely right.
We don't have a community. We don't have quote unquote Black communities.
No, we don't.
We only have Black neighborhoods.
Yep.
That's it.
Because a community will entail a school, a medical center, groceries,
the basics,
appliances,
the basics, right?
Handymans, like your basic necessities to function is what you will get out of your community. We have to go outside our community, and then even the things that's in our community are not feeding us. The 7-Elevens and the hair technicians and nails and like all that stuff is where we give out the liquor stores and stuff like that. That's where we give our money to. They get our first dollar.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy how we traded in group economics for social integration.
Yep. Yeah. That's wow.
We literally traded in group economics for social integration because we wanted to sit at their restaurant.
Because we had the group economics.
We
thing
had
going
it.
on. We go, and then a lot of people say,
We were forced to have it.
and this is the argument that I push back on because they say, yeah, we had it, but what happened? They burned it down and they destroyed it. Even though that might be true, they can't burn it down now. That won't fly now.
Mm-hmm.
So what's stopping us from creating it? If we did it once, we could do it again. If people that were that much closer to slavery and Jim Crow and all those segregated laws and stuff, if they were able to flourish and create these communities, how is it that we can't do it now in 2025?
Because we still stuck into that white man's ice is colder than ours, and trying to
Yeah, that's
aspire to live like these affluent Europeans.
Affluent Europeans, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's our problem now. But that's why we traded in social integrate. I mean, group economics for social integration.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we are trying to live like them. We want them to recognize us as their equals, but it's like it's never gonna happen.
Mm-mm.
So it's just like stop trying. Like let's just focus on us.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just focus on, like you said, rebuilding our communities. Let's just focus on rotating our dollars. And then again, I mean, just because we rotate our dollars within our community doesn't mean we go outside of it. But we gotta start prioritizing ourselves.
Yeah.
We gotta start prioritizing our own communities. And until we do these things, then we will continue to be the laughing stock of the world, in America specifically, when it comes to finances.
Yeah.
Because we just don't get it, and every other group gets it. Especially now, going back to the previous topic, our relationships with each other. We cannot sustain a quote unquote generation of wealth. Going back to last week's principles, if every generation is striving to use the money that they're earning to just YOLO, you only live twice, because hey, I had to do it. I had to get myself out the mud. So the next generation got to figure out, just like I got to figure it out. So it's like we're not even leaving any stepping stones for the next generation to quote unquote be able to continue the work of the previous generation. And we wonder why we're so far behind. And why everybody else is so far ahead. So it's like, yeah, we have to start prioritizing these things in our children's youth. Yes. So we have to start making sure they get good at math when they turn 2 years old. I saw a video recently of a little girl. She couldn't have been no more than 1 or 2, but she was, reciting her ABCs. But again, A is for apple, B is for ball, C is for cat. Like, that's how we start changing the narrative for ourselves. We have to go away from A being apple to A being an asset. Yeah. B being a bank account. You know what I'm saying? C being cash flow.
Cash flow, right.
D being dividend.
Yeah.
Like, we have to start instilling this language and this vocabulary into our youth early and often, so that as they are growing up in this world that they live in and they're getting all the psychological welfare of consumerism jammed down their throat, they at least have something to balance it off of, or bounce it off of. You know what I mean? It ain't just, like you said, buy. Right. It's oh, okay, well, yeah, I know I can buy, but again, I'm developing financial discipline. I know what an asset is. I know what a liability is now. I know all these things, to where, now I'm in a better position to be able to make better financial decisions for myself. But wealth begins at home. So it begins with us as the adults. So it's going to require a sacrifice from us, ladies and gentlemen. If it's going to require a sacrifice from us. So yeah, it's going to probably require a sacrifice of a generation or two for us to build those first stepping stones for the next generations to come. Now, that don't mean that we not go enjoy ourselves and have a good life. Again, we just got to implement these principles. So again, being selectively extravagant and prudently frugal. You know what I'm saying, when it comes to certain areas of life. So again,
focus on being rich and rather than looking rich.
So again, prom season right now. Your kid don't need all these extravagant clothes and vehicles.
A horse,
Right. And this show called the Champagne
a
Party.
Lamborghini.
And it's, you know what, anyone was crazy? I saw one of my classmates. So we've been out of college for at least 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
She's still reminiscing off of her champagne party.
Champagne party.
She's still reposting pictures like, oh yeah, it's prom season. I remember. So it's like we gotta elevate ourselves from these low level desire for these quote unquote memories.
And it's like my mind went when I seen all these champagne parties and all this extravagant waste of money. I said, I wonder if they know that they son or daughter can't read or write.
Yes, they don't.
So like you cannot be spending all this money as a parent to get all this extravagant, balloons and step and repeats, and somebody got a all black stallion horse. I mean, pictures looked amazing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and then the way they dressing all gaudy and flamboyant, and you know,
You know what's crazy? I mean, you said that, it made me realize in our community, we're living by these principles, just the inverse version.
yeah.
So instead of being selectively extravagant and prudently frugal, and selectively extravagant when it comes to, again, education, we're selectively extravagant when it comes to frivolous spending on champagne parties, proms, birthday parties, entertainment at the end of the day. So we will spend extravagantly on entertainment, but then we want to be prudently frugal when it comes to education.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
Do I gotta buy you this book?
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Right.
But hey, little Johnny, go check your room. He got every colorway of the Jordan that came out that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
And they all wearing. You notice they all wearing sneaks and Jordans with their
Right.
formal wear now.
Right. You know, we know. Oh, Samantha, I got you some new clothes on your bed. She got the full Gucci suit. You know what I'm saying? And she's 16 years old, but it's like you said, she can't read. She can't write.
Can't count.
Can't count. Can't comprehend.
She don't understand if I give you $1 bill
Can't think.
and this costs 35 cents, how much change I get back? They like,
Yeah.
huh?
Facts.
It's ridiculous. It's this guy that's on TikTok. He goes around asking like these random questions like that. That shit just tickles me every time. I mean, it's sad.
And it be basic stuff. It'd be like the ones that be blowing my mind. It'd be like it'd be basic geography. That's kind of like the geography one. Because I remember, because every time they ask these questions, I go back to remember being in school, in elementary school, and because I remember we had to learn that.
Yeah.
We had to learn the capitals of
I
every
still
state.
know my capitals. We had to know the capitals across the world.
We didn't go worldwide, but at my school we only went to states. But that's even doper that y'all went worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember we had to know our geography. We had to
Yeah.
know these basic things about the country we lived in.
Yep. They asked, name 2 countries. The motherfucker said Idaho and Kentucky. I was like, God damn, you think Idaho and Kentucky is a country? I was like, wow, man, this shit is just blowing my mind. This shit is just blowing my fucking mind. They're like, what's the capital of the United States?
Right.
They like, I don't know that. I don't know that. I don't know. Fucking, I don't know. Oh, you got me on that one.
The one that be catching me be like, what time is it if it's a 12:15?
Oh yeah, they be like 12:25. Like 25 is a quarter. Like, yeah, when you talk about money, yeah, 25 is a quarter, yeah. But as far as we talking about the quarter of a 60-second clock.
And a lot of these individuals from time to time be quote unquote college educated people.
Oh yeah, I already told you I got high school graduates that couldn't even spell them right. But
so we got to do better, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the first step to us doing better is prioritizing the idea that wealth begins at home.
Yeah, that's very important.
And wealth begins at home. It begins with the principles that you operate your house by. That's really what ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's where it's at.
The principles you make the decision to operate your house by, so you can do what your parents did, which wasn't best because you said it wasn't best. as you was growing up and then when you became an adult. But for whatever reason, we lean back to that default programming to raise our kids up in the same, within the same breath.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, no, we have to reimagine these principles that we are living through. And we now have 8. So look at the last week's episode, look this week episode, got the 8. And again, take baby steps. Figure out how you can implement these things in your own households, but you have to do this if you want to not just survive in this world, but thrive in this world.
That part. All right, that brings us to our final topic segment, the one that I'm sure you guys like out there, responding directly to your comments.
Yes, sir.
So where we at today, Diesel?
So today we go come back again from the book of TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
The verse we go pull from is, I think we had a lot of action on this topic here. Has the red pill ruined generations of men? So let's go ahead and dive on in. This is where we were just talking about how where we were questioning, has the red pill ruined generations of men? And I think I said, like, yes, there have been definitely some men who have taken it to an extreme. But for the most part, no, it hasn't, because if anything, it has just made men more aware. So the next comment came from Tuesday Morning Quarterback. It says, some people take everything to an extreme. Mm-hmm. Some people use this as an excuse to never look into any truth at all. I would agree. There's definitely some instances of this at play. And in regards to the red pill, though, I do know that there are some men who have taken it to an extreme.
Yeah, because even like in that movie, there was a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You had a choice to make, and so with that being a choice being prevalent, that means, like he said, you could choose one or the other. You could choose to deal or embrace these hard truths, or you could deal to stay sleep or dormant. You know what I mean? Like, because maybe you're not built to be that person. Maybe you're not built to handle the ups and downs. Maybe you function better as someone that has it all laid out, and you're fine with going on the path that someone laid out before you.
Mm-hmm.
So
again, it's right, maps. So map GPS.
Yeah.
Our next one came from a David Monette. They want us to host society, or I guess that was maybe hold. They want us to hold society together when it doesn't benefit us at all, like a slave. No more crash and burn.
They want us to hold society together when it doesn't benefit us.
I don't ever think that there's not going to be no benefit in men doing what we do to hold society together, because we are society, in my opinion, when it comes to that level of life. Because again, if we stop doing what we're doing, if men stop showing up in the world crumbles.
For sure.
Like, no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Right.
So, we still are going to show up, though, just because of principle. But it seems like men don't understand that they don't have to play the game. You know what I'm saying? When it's specifically now when it comes to relationships with women, you guys don't have to play the game. You don't have to engage in the foolery. You know what I mean? You can only be a victim if you choose to engage in the foolery of the game. Right. So yes, it's going to be challenging. The world is filled with it girls now. You're 100% correct. However, there are still some solid women in the world.
For sure.
There are still some women that have character. There are still women who have virtue. And there are still women who are being raised to be wives.
Yeah.
They not go look like the it girls that y'all men mostly seem to be infatuated with. But they exist. So you, as men, we have to make a decision. What is our priority? Are we focused on just surface level traits for a woman that we want to be our wife and mother of our children? Or do we want that substance? That's a personal choice every man has to make for himself. And in this day and age, it does seem like a lot of men settle for the surface level traits.
I just thought about something. I said the way the reason they're settling goes back to the topic that we had: courtship versus dating, when courtship was private. So therefore, all those we outside now is the terminology. So only people that's outside is your it girl. But that virtuous Courtship worthy girl is still being private and like she's not outside.
Mm-hmm.
She's not in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
She's not at the club. She ain't doing the shots of
The
Jaeger
butt
bomb
shots.
and all that
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
twerking
Right.
and all that stuff. She's still like, in spaces that's, conducive to her her being virtuous,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. She's not into being loud
And
and
obnoxious.
obnoxious
Right.
and drunk and messy drunk, pissy drunk and all that stuff. So to the point, like, yeah, they all out here, but I don't think they outside, like, because we think, yeah, we outside there, like, and so that's why everyone, you got all the men going outside because you really can't find the courtship worthy women because they ain't outside. And that's why the
Mm-hmm.
second point to it, that's why the whole courtship was a whole family endeavor
Mm-hmm.
thing, and that's why it was private because it was, the family working together to position the female in a good light and whatever the case may be, and hook her up with a man that came from decent stock, great family, and that could support her. And so therefore that stuff was done privately. Like the person that wanted the wife wasn't trying to get the girl that was down at the brothel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But
Right.
she
Right. Right.
wasn't an option.
Right.
So why is that? Why is you giving that as an option now in 2025?
Exactly. Well, we do. My theory is we give it as an option in the name of individualism,
Yeah.
and just you can have and do whatever you want and feel happy, feel love, and
So I
feel.
guess the question is how and with the dynamics of the world today, how do we find this virtuous woman or the courtship worthy woman?
I believe we have to go back to you already said it, arranged marriages. Got to
How?
go back to that because to your point, you just actually I never thought of it like that, but you actually make a good point that the virtuous woman she not outside.
Hell no.
She's not outside
Mm-mm.
ever.
No.
She goes outside to go handle her business.
She don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You
She
know
don't
what I
want to
mean?
be. She don't want to be a part of that.
Right. Right.
So there it is.
Just like a nigga that's worth something, he ain't on the block.
Yep.
He ain't outside on the block.
Mm-hmm.
The fuck I'm out here for? Like sitting duck.
Right. Right. All right. The next comment came from I ain't said nothing. I have no clue what I'll talk about. I thought red and blue pill was from the Matrix. I have no clue
What y'all talking about? Maybe.
he said. I'll.
I
And
guess that could have been YALL.
with the owl.
He hit the I in that thing before. I mean, by mistake. I'll
I have no
talking
clue what
about.
y'all.
Go
I have
ahead.
no clue what y'all talking about. I thought red pill and blue pill was from the Matrix. It is from the
It is from the
Matrix.
Matrix, genius.
And it has been a concept that has been redressed specifically for dating and relationships to represent something that is foreign to what it originally started off as when the Matrix dropped it in 1999.
And like we said, it could be adapted to anything. It's
Anything,
not
right?
just limited to relationships.
It's life.
You
It's
could
life principle.
life principles. You could take the red and blue pill, and it's all about how you face challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Is whether you take a red pill approach or do you take a blue pill approach.
Right. So next comment comes from West Side Chronicles.
What side?
They say a lot of misogyny towards women and blaming / victimhood in red pill. It's giving I can't naturally attract women, so I hate them. Instead of let me improve myself so I'm more attractive.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I don't think red pill it doesn't constitute hating women. I disagree.
I think that's the low level learner response to the red pill, blue pill. If you
But
are
the red pill has never been spoken of in the light where I never heard no one say they hate women like because of the red pill thing. That was
I agree.
it never came across where the woman was put down because of you had the red pill mentality.
Mm-hmm. But that's what people's interpretation of men saying whatever they saying, or the red quote unquote red pill men is, oh, you guys just must hate women. Oh, like you guys must hate you hate. But again, the red pill man is a man who does his homework. He's a critical thinker, specifically now when it comes to a relationship. So again, he's gonna go and do his own personal investigation and research on the history of dating to learn what we talked about in the previous to understand why it is what it is, so he can move accordingly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You
But
gotta-
again, that's gonna be obviously not to women's interest, because now that's just one less guy that they're gonna be able to just quote unquote get to just give him something because
I mean,
of,
but
of,
it
the, of
could
being an it
it
girl.
could be in that woman's interest because now you see what the man is valuing,
Right.
put value on, and what he's really want. So therefore, it's up to y'all to change.
Mm-hmm.
And y'all changed and became this it girl, charity girl, and shop girl. Y'all went through those changes. All right, now let's change and become ladies. When we gonna make that change? When that's gonna be when that's gonna be the thing?
Yeah, when the women go get back to being women of virtue.
Yeah.
So next one is not JJ. They say red pill has helped men. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Next one is Cruz. They say nah, it woke them up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Next one was a Joshua Ford. How can it? All Red Pill did was expose the double standards, manipulation, games, and antics of predatory women while teaching men to have a backbone against nonsense. I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Then someone responds to Joshua Ford, a Roundhouse Rick. Roundhouse Rick says, literally the same situation as how people are mad at Doe's for exposing corruption. We live in a crazy clown world.
That we do.
Good point, gentlemen.
That we do.
Last comment is from a Steven Fit. They say red pill is needed. Stop it. I'm like, yes, red pill is needed.
It is.
So that's responding directly, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have anything you would like to hop on and leave a comment for one of the clips we post, feel free to do so on any platform.
Yeah, we love to hear from
especially
you.
TikTok. And like you said, you might make it on the show.
And we love when y'all engage with each other too. That's awesome.
The ripples. Let the ripples continue to ripple.
All right, that wraps it up for another dynamic episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. Today's episode challenged us to rethink how nations protect power, how people pursue love, and how communities build wealth. Whether it's understanding tariffs as a form of economic self-defense, reimagining the purpose behind romantic relationships, or studying timeless financial principles, each topic reveals that intention and not just action is the real game changer. Each of these topics, seemingly unrelated on the surface, come back to the same core question. Are we moving with purpose or just reacting to the moment? The ripples we create, whether in love, money, or national policy, start with the choices we make today. So let's choose to be intentional, everyone. Let's choose to think generationally, and let's choose to build deliberately. Until the next time, I'm your boy Quattro.
I'm Diesel.
Make sure y'all tap into all our social media platforms. All the handles are below. And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Peace.